All right, welcome back to Real Estate Team Builders. Today is a big milestone for the podcast, 450 episodes. And I thought we'd hang out with the guy that started it all with me back in the day. I think it was episode 0, if there ever was one. I don't even know when that was, but Matt Johnson and Pursuing Results and Micro Famous, and just an awesome guy, man of God. And so we just thought we'd hang out for a little bit and chat about the journey. And I thought it'd be cool to have someone that is been in the real estate space, just knows how to build businesses and how to build influence, and just talk a little bit about the good, bad, ugly of the journey of business and podcasting and all of it. So welcome, Matt.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, and honored to be here on the big milestone episode. We were joking around behind the scenes that maybe for the 500th we'll go after Tony Robbins. So I'm sure I'll be a very small fish in what will be a very big pond of guests. But yeah, I wanted to jump on with you because you do a ton of solo episodes. So I wanted to market with something a little bit different than just having you jump on and do another solo episode, because I wanted to hopefully pull some things out of you. So I'm going to ask you some selfishly curious questions and see where we go with this. But just on, is there anything that really jumps out to you out of all the guests that you've interviewed? What is the biggest maybe transformational story of zero to hero that you've heard and profiled of a guest on the show, where it sticks out to you now as someone that was starting from that exact place of frustration and long hours and not a great marriage and all those things to living the exact life that you want to see people live? Is there anyone that really exemplifies that journey?
Yeah, I would say Dave Hook, who I think I've had on a couple times, and I had just the honor of being in his life from, his wife Jenny pregnant with their first child when I met him, and he was working I think about 80 hours a week. He owned an independent brokerage, and he had a small team. And he was doing, I remember, probably like 80, 90 transactions, but like 75 or 85 were his own productions. So the typical, a buyer agent or two, but didn't have time to coach and love on them, and just running and gunning, not thinking about where he wanted this to end up. And that's been the theme with everyone that I come into contact with. It's just like something good is going to happen one day. I just know it, Yeah. And so I was lucky enough to grab him on the front end of his journey, and I think he would have put in all the effort. I think he would have figured some things out, but just to be able to share with him my failures, my mistakes, like, don't do that. I've already tried it. I actually tried it 3 times and it didn't work all 3 times. And so he went from, 100 to 300 transactions, which is awesome. But he did it on the right economic model, which is even more awesome. And he did it in a way where he works 90 minutes a week in that business now. He owns 3 businesses now that are all leveraged to the point where he's less than a couple hours a week in all 3 businesses. And he did it in a way where he grew his talent from within. His team loves the business that he's built. His team loves the fact that he can step away from his business, and he took his time to build it. There wasn't this like rush for growth. Like people say, like, I've got to go from 50 to 100 deals next year. It's like, why do you have to do that? Like, I don't know. It's just like, I have to, because there's an agent in my market that does 100 homes. It's like, is that a good reason? Like, do have you talked to that agent's wife?
Yeah, exactly.
Have you taken their blood work? Can you see their bank accounts? Like, you know what I mean? So I just think there's a lot of facade out there, and Dave Hook is the real deal. And they have 3 kids now. And so he's able just to do something that his dad was not able to do, which is just be completely present. I did Vox with him recently, and he said he's a little more than stir crazy. So we do have that gene in us that even if we figure out how to build something like a true business, we're going to go tinker with something. Hopefully we don't mess up the thing, but we're going to go do something else. So that's the first story that comes to mind.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there anything for yourself just along the last few years since I've known you? I want to talk about leadership maybe a little bit. What do you think is the biggest leadership challenge that you've had along the way, whether it's in the core real estate business or in the coaching business, like trying to lead people to change their own agent businesses? What's the biggest leadership challenge that comes to mind?
Yeah. So this is actually something I feel like I'm very late to the game on, like, I wish someone would have come alongside me and said, hey, when you hire your first assistant, you are now a leader, and let me just teach you some things. So I feel like now in real estate B school, I'm doing that for others that are earlier on in their journey,
Right.
because I see, $3-4 million businesses, $5 million real estate teams, with a team owner is a dictator, and it's control, and it's transactional management. So my journey was like, I got so busy in my real estate business. I'm like, I need people. I'm building systems, marketing, technology, whatever it takes. I had the eye towards growth, so I was going to grow no matter what. And I viewed people, they were there to serve me,
Yeah.
which is horrible.
Yeah.
Like, looking back on, and I didn't know better at the time, so I'm not overly down, but I really hurt some people, and I had to have some real conversations with people after the fact. My style, my natural style in a high stress situation is to tell people what to do and minimize their feelings, and none of those good things. But now, and I've made a shift in the last 5 years incrementally. That was the biggest challenge, was just being so stressed all the time, where I was in constant trigger mode. I was constantly triggered by, like, an agent complaining about something, about a commission split or something, where they have a genuine, they're a human being, right? God created them, like, just like he created me. And yet in those early days, I just didn't know how to deal with those relationships. And so that's been some of the most painful lessons, but some of the most valuable lessons. And now, just looking forward, in a bigger stage now with EXP, and now I'm shepherding 780 agents as of this recording. I think it's going to be like 1,800 to 2,000 by the 13 months from now, by the end of 2022. And the massive responsibility that is, really just the heaviness of leadership. Like, it's a big responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, is I think there's a tendency to get sucked into exactly what you got sucked into, which is to look at the business. Yes, the business is a vehicle for your lifestyle, but the people in your business, you have to treat them and as people that need to be served and led. They're not just cogs in the machinery. Like, it's, the automation, the systems in the business, those can be the cogs in the machinery, but the people have to be led, especially in a business like this. It's one thing if they're just full-time employees and they're cranking out widgets in a machine shop. That's one thing. And even those people still need to be shepherded. But especially when you're dealing with a real estate team, is a really interesting, weird mix of polar opposite personalities: high D, high I, or high IS salespeople, and then high SC admin people. Like, you're throwing people that are on the opposite ends of the spectrum into a giant basket, mixing them all up, and then throwing like the highest stress environment at them of people moving,
and just hoping it'll be
good. Yeah. Just basically hoping it'll work out. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
So I like talking about the leadership challenge. That's always interesting. Let's talk a little bit about maybe something that you learned along the way. There was something interesting that you said about starting the podcast, which I think applies, and it was like a little insight into the way that your mind works that I wanted to point out for the audience. So when you first started with the podcast with me, I don't know if you remember saying this, but it was something to the effect of, I don't expect to be good at this for at least 100 episodes. I'm like, perfect. That's exactly how you should approach it. And obviously now you're even better than you were at the start, and you were pretty good to begin with, because you'd already been talking about this stuff for years before we launched the podcast. And I'm just curious where that comes from and where that mentality pops out in other areas. Just the willingness to set a long time frame, say, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z for this period of time. I'm not going to expect to be great at it. I'm not going to expect a ton of results immediately. I'm just going to commit to doing this for this certain time frame, and then we'll evaluate it at that point and see where do we go from here. Where did that come from, and where else does it pop out?
Yeah, it's something that's easy to say, hard to do. So it's easy to say, and it's been proven that most people overestimate what they can do in a year, and they drastically underestimate what they can do in 3 to 5 years. And so I've made all the mistakes, everything you can make a mistake with, and I've made it multiple times in all of it. The one thing that I was good at the numbers. So I knew I had to follow an economic model no matter what. Even if I was failing in leadership and I wasn't treating people right, I knew I had to stick to a model. And then I also knew that I was really good at seeing the future. I think part of me is programmed that way. where I just know where I'm going to be in 3 years.
Hmm.
I don't exactly know how I'm going to get there, but I know generally what my life is going to look like, what the hours I want to work, the money I want to make. And I was just really good at working backwards. So, you know, even when I first got into real estate, I didn't have any sales experience. I had never prospected before, or built systems or any of that, managed people or anything.
Mhm.
But I knew that I had to get leads coming in, and then I had to call those leads, and then I had to set appointments and sign them as clients and then sell them a home.
Mhm.
And so for 3 years, that's all I did. I literally had like one lead source, one script, one buyer presentation, and I just did that 44 times in my first full year, then 58 times in my second full year, and then I brought on a buyer agent, and then that third year, that's when the team sort of was birthed. And I just think I don't know what it is. I think I'm so drawn to the future that I will do whatever it takes today to make it happen. Like it doesn't matter. I'll tell someone,
Hmm.
and especially now with EXP and the leverage opportunity there, I'll ask somebody like if you could dig ditches for 50 hours a week for the next 3 years, literally digging ditches, shovel, backaches every day, 50 hours a week. But at the end of it, you knew you would have 20,000 residual income that would grow from there. Would you do it? Every person's like, 100%. Digging ditches sounds better than selling houses right now. Right. And so, but very few people will have the time on task to get good enough at anything to be able to essentially write their own future in terms of income and hours. And so
Yeah.
that's the whole equation. It's just like a willingness to stick in there and get good enough at something. You have guys coming. I coach guys that have come out of Mike Ferry, and Mike Ferry, the one thing he does really well. I disagree with he doesn't believe in some of the same things I do in terms of leverage and freedom from a business. But the guys that are high level Ferry guys, I mean, they know their scripts. They can make as much money as they want.
Mhm.
Right. Because they're committed to. I coach a guy who's been tracking his numbers. He'd been in Mike Ferry since like 2002 or something. He literally showed me his numbers for 19 years.
Yeah.
He does the same thing every morning, 5 days a week, same time blocks in the afternoon for listing appointments.
Yep.
Right. So, yeah. So I just think you have to be able to commit to getting good at one thing long enough where you could do the next thing. So I got good at working with buyers. And then I'm like, oh crap, I got to generate some listing leads because this sucks working with buyers. So then I got good at generating listing leads, and I get really good at taking listings. And I built a system around, I'm like, this sucks too. I don't want to go in people's houses in the evenings and 3 times on a Saturday, 3 different houses. So let me build a system and have someone replace that. And then like coaching agents is hard. So being the energy all the time. I'm an introvert. You're an introvert. Coaching and leading agents all day long is hard for our personality. So I'm like, okay, I can build a system. I can hire someone to do it. And then I found myself very useless in every part of my real estate team. So I just had to extract myself from all of it. And
oh man.
So I just think it's a commitment to a bigger future. And I think it's easy to say, like, do you have a why? My why has changed over time. Initially, though, I came from no money in a jacked up childhood. My wife came from no money in a even more jacked up childhood. And I was like, every morning I would tell myself, I'm willing to do anything today to create a life for my family that they never thought was possible. My wife included. And that changed, because that was very inward and selfish. And we did that pretty quickly. And then it became, now I get the ability to help my agents build a life for them that they never thought was possible. I could take an agent that sold 1 home a year before he joined me. And my first agent sold 27 homes with me the first year. And he made 6 figures, changed his life. He was with me for 7 years, Chris Goodwin. Right. So, and now it becomes like, how can I be a leader of leaders? Now I can impact all these teams and all these agents and the ripple effects in their family and their communities. And so it's just pretty cool, not to get all soapboxy and preachy, but it's the emotional juice is the thing that's going to get you out of bed early, get you to bed earlier, so you can actually sleep enough and be on point and get up ahead of your family and do the right things to prepare yourself every day to be consistent.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so I admired that approach, and it was something that always stuck with me, and I've tried to take into my own approach, especially to goal setting. It's one thing, when you sometimes when you tap into that emotional fuel and you tap into that goal, that place that you want to be in a few years, you tend to commit to things and you take action in such a way that you burn out quickly. You put such expectations on yourself to fix things right now in the moment that you end up burning out emotionally. And 2 or 3 months later, you can't keep doing the same activities. And that was what was really interesting about the way that you came in, is you're like, look, I'm committing to this for a certain period of time. I know exactly what I want to do, but I know it's not going to feel amazing necessarily. And I'm not going to feel super confident in this in between time until I build the skill set with time on task. Yeah, that's really what I was hoping to pull out, is where that comes from, and how people can learn from it. Because I think it carries over into even just very simple things, like when it's time to try a new lead generation system, or a prospecting tech, or even just teaching a certain type of prospecting to your agents if you're in the team leader role. Like, it's going to take time for those things to pay off, and you've got to have the patience to commit to it for a certain period of time and go, I know along the way I'm going to have doubts, and in those times I'm going to go, no, this is when I evaluated, this is what I've committed to, this is the time frame I'm giving it to see if it's going to work, and then I'll evaluate it then. And I think that's something that you have that other people can learn from and hopefully step into, because it'll make their life a lot less frustrating along the way. Anyway.
Yeah. So I have this baseline understanding now that literally everything's a scroll, whether it's news or Netflix or anything you could think of. It's going to take you off of achieving your 3-year vision for all the areas of like business, finances, for sure. Yeah. Like that's most of what we talk about as hard charging business people.
Right.
But then there's like all the other stuff: your marriage, your kids, your physical body, your spiritual journey, your emotional well-being, any hobbies or any siblings that you need to sort of, friends and those relationships. But the killer now is just social media and news and Netflix. And if you're stressed and you're constantly triggered, you're going to look to those things to sedate. And, I tend to eat, I snack and watch TV. Those are my sort of zone out. And it allows me to stay up too late. And then I missed an hour in the morning. And so it just, the vicious cycle can happen. And it's happening to me like in this season where there's not this big, like painful financial motivation. So now I have to reground to a different why, a bigger why, so we're partnering with like these missionaries that like this amazing thing where it's like a ground floor missionary work, and we're giving funds, we're going to be giving funds, but we can see exactly where the funds are going. So I can know, man, I can help a village in Kenya. Yeah. Literally my money's going right into the village and I can see it, versus I'm good at stroking checks and doing it recurring, but I have no idea what it does. Yeah. So that, I think that's the emotional juice I need for this next stage.
I like it. Yeah. That's something everybody goes through. Like you said, once you get over that immediate, like financial motivator that kind of self motivates you, you've got to figure out what your next why is. And that is an interesting transition time that any leader goes through.
And looking back on the journey, and this is a common thread too. I think of the 450 episodes, probably 200 are interviews, or 100. I mean, it's over 150. So I've just had the opportunity to talk to, folks that serve the industry and they've seen things that I've seen, or people that have built big businesses and what they go through. Every one of them has surrounded themselves with some people that are attracted to a vision, and they're willing to sort of honestly put up with the person. Like we're not easy to be around. My natural, like ask my wife, I will come up with an idea. Like we should look at moving closer to our kids' school. And that was on a Wednesday. I took Bold at KW when I was with KW. And they said, write your 3-year vision of like one thing you want. I'm like, well, I want to live in this neighborhood, this kind of house in 3 years. That was on a Wednesday.
Okay.
We looked at 13 houses on Saturday and it was a 3-year vision. And I was approved for like that next week, like totally underwritten.
Yep.
And we put an offer on one of the houses that we've looked at on Saturday, and we live at it today. My wife will tell you that story. Like in her mind, she is very like linear. She
Uh-huh.
said, you told me 3 years. I
Yeah.
was like, 3 years, that sounds great. Perfect amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like 3 months. And so, and I bring up that point because for me, when I look back on my real estate team, my first hire, I ran a Craigslist at 2 a.m. Tia Wilson responded. She lived like 5 houses down in a metro that has 2.4 million people. And she had a license, and she stepped in and took all of the administrative stuff off my plate.
Amazing.
And she helped me build systems, and she was just a different, same thing in real estate B school. The first client to ever give me money to coach them was Stacy Peterson. She reached out to me on a Friday. She had seen me at a Kinderese event speaking on stage. She's like, hey, could you teach me some stuff or whatever? And I'm like, call me on Monday. I'm starting a coaching company. And I actually was, like, legit, I was. So God's hand was in all of it for sure.
Yeah.
We had kids the same age. She was doing about 100 deals at that time.
Yeah.
She ended up tripling her business, going down from 7 days a week to 5 days to 3 to 2, then coaching for real estate B school, and then coming in and helping to build the systems out in real estate B school. Same thing she did in a real estate team. She ran 222 transactions through one administrator on her real estate team, because her mind I have a systems orientation to my mind, but her mind is more like actually bringing, like my pastor says, like, he got complimented once. Someone said, pastor, you have a way of bringing the hay where the goats, the sheep can eat it. So instead of, like, I tend to be in the high level in the clouds.
Right.
But Stacy is really good at taking that and putting it out in a way where people can use it and understand it. And so I don't think real estate B school would be what it is today without a person like that, without Stacy. She's led the day-to-day operations before when I had to step back for personal reasons. I went from 30 hours a week to like 2 hours a week in that business in like 3 days. And she took it over. So, and she does it because she sees this big impact, this big vision, and she wants to. So that person, along all of those successful businesses, that has been a key theme through everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And to bring it back, I think that where you were initially going with that is just the idea that you were charging hard, and you put up a random ad on Craigslist at 2 a.m. and next thing you know, you've got somebody in the business that takes all that stuff off. And you can achieve and get there a lot faster than you probably think if you take the right action.
Yeah.
Love it.
Awesome.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're limited on time, so I appreciate it. And for anybody that's in the listening audience, just from my perspective, I love the show, love Lars. And if you do too, make sure that you leave a rating and a review on iTunes. It's one of the best ways that you can help. Obviously, share the show with other agents that you know of that would benefit, because this is life-changing stuff. If you put this podcast in the hands of people, it's going to change their lives. So Lars, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing the show. I know people in the audience appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Awesome. And I would just add on there, if you didn't end the recording yet, pick up a copy of the book, not to plug your stuff, but for sure, Micro Famous.
Oh, my stuff. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's in the video if you're watching the video, so it's subtle, but I would say give a quick pitch for the book.
Basically, if you want to be influential, so if you want to coach, lead, train, speak, write books, whatever you want to do, where you're influencing and impacting other people, that's the path to get there. And you don't need 1 million eyeballs on you or your content. There's a way to do it with a small, focused audience that really falls in love with your stuff and with you. And that will basically lay out the path to become famously influential to the right people.
And I'll say one thing on that. So my kids, I showed them my YouTube channel recently. And so the podcast is published on YouTube. You guys do all that. You produce all of it, do an awesome job. And I'm like, guys, this video had like 173 views. I'm like, guys, that's 100. Can you imagine 173 people looking at me? And they're like, Mr. Beast dropped a video that got like 100 million views in like 2 days, Dad. And I'm like, you guys have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like, look at the freaking house you live in. Like those 173 views. That's the whole point of Micro Famous, is that it's the 173 right people. Like people are reaching out to me now, and even more so than before. And I'm getting on the phone with people and having meaningful conversations, and it doesn't take a lot of people. So anyway, much love, brother. Thanks for all you do.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.